Sweetwater was very much so. Yep, very much so. They were, they had a feeling of being a really important member of the family, and they treated me beautifully.
Going back to your childhood, I read a brief piece on you where you are described as a self-described juvenile delinquent. Is that pretty much how it was for you growing up?
Oh, it is. I was a self-described juvenile delinquent.
Is that right?
Yeah. Boy, I'm a piker now compared to today's, but you know, just your average organizing poker games in the bathroom at high school and smoking cigarettes, and, you know, we're supposed to do that, right? And, you know, a little shoplifting here and there.
Yeah.
Real teenage adolescence,
you
know. So it just almost seems like Doris Day now, but, you know.
Tell us about some of your earlier musical forays before Sweetwater. You sang on the coffee house circuit over there, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, I've always been a natural singer. I started singing, I can remember the power of singing and being an entertainer from when I was really a really young girl, like, I don't know, maybe 5 years old. I was just walking. I was holding my mom's hand and my aunt's hand, and I started singing. And when I sang, they stopped talking and they listened to me, and I got this rush, you know, because that's what the performer likes, you know, that rush that they're being listened to. Mm. And I even remember the song. It was Pat Boone's Love Letters in the Sand. Isn't that great?
Wow.
Remember that song?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
my God. On a day like today. You know, and I sang that, and they stopped talking. They listened to me. So this ham was born that day. And I sang in choirs. And when the, that early folk music started to hit, I had a little pal. She was a great guitar player. Her name was Diane. She was great, just in the same way that Bonnie Raitt plays.
Yeah.
This girl was playing like that. In fact, we would go to see Bonnie Raitt, and she was like the same age, but she was on the club circuit, and we were still in high school. Mm. And anyway, so this girl and I we just got into these coffee houses, but it was not like Starbucks, and it wasn't popular. You know, it was weird then. It's like, what are you doing going to Hollywood, going to coffee houses? You girls are weird. And our heroes were all these old black blues singers from Mississippi. You know, two little white girls from Glendale, which was a real redneck burg in L.A. then, you know. And we were into this dark, you know, I've been so down, and, you know, the crop won't grow. We were into that kind of, because we had these feelings of you know, disenchantment and angst, and we always felt like we were cheated, and there was another truth, and all this kind of stuff. There was kind of the sometimes the root of that sort of 60s mentality. But we trooped around in and out of all these coffee houses, and there were drugs then, that they were, you know, the LSD thing and all that, but that was not the center of what we were doing. We would go to these joints and learn from these people, and then we played with them too. And people would enjoy, you know, both Diane's work and my own work quite a lot. So we had this whole thing going. Meanwhile, I was supposed to be in school taking algebra. But we weren't. We weren't there. We were truant a lot, and, you know. So it was in one of those places that I happened into the group, but they weren't the group that we became. It was a huge band called Jay Walker and the Pedestrians, but they weren't even organized. They were just they filled up this coffee house, and they all looked like a ragtag bunch. I mean, nobody had ever seen anybody like this. They were like the first mini United Nations, you know.
It was, wasn't it?
They had like a paraplegic in a wheelchair who played the cymbals, and he didn't play them on time, and nobody cared. And then they had, a lot of strange characters, like from every part of the world, and from that, Sweetwater was born because, about 6 or 7 of us broke away from Jay Walker, and we set up in this little house in this bohemian district in LA called Silver Lake, and that's where we grew. And that's where, to get back to your original question, that's where that feeling of family was born in me. That's where I started to get a feeling of self-esteem, having something I could do that was good.
One of the things that Sweetwater is, I guess, best remembered for is that multicultural nature of the lineup. Now, how much do you think the varied ethnic backgrounds of the members influenced the eventual sound of the band?
Oh, it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the band. If you listen to the early records, it's the difference. It's the classical underpinnings, and then the Latin is firmly entrenched in the percussion and the rhythms. And then there's the classical music and jazz in the guitars. And it was a huge thing. And then my own influences were more the blues and that kind of thing. So that the differences were what's made Sweetwater stand out. And we were the first band to have that. No one else sounded like us. Absolutely nobody. I remember being in the dressing room in San Francisco at Fillmore West when Carlos Santana came back to see us after one of our shows. And he pointed at our congas and said, "I'm going to try that someday." It's unbelievable.
He sure did.
Yeah.
Of the bands of your era, yours would probably be one of the hardest to categorise for those who like to pigeonhole their music. Do you think that worked against you at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it made a certain kind of concert promoter afraid, and it made it hard to get airplay for those really rigid, people that want to label you. Well, that was hard. Though we did get a lot of airplay because our popularity was strong.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's still hard to label us.
How did your first record deal come together? I believe there were quite a few companies knocking down your door at the time.
Absolutely. It was like a fairy tale. We were playing at the Whiskey. We had opened for Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company. And I think it was the second or third night and 11 record companies showed up on this one night to bid for us. And it was like a fairy tale. I mean, it just never happens. But it happened to us. At that period when it could happen, when music was just this whole music business that we know today was only in its earliest germination.
Mm. What made you settle with Warner's?
I think we got the manager, got the deal he wanted with them.
Yeah.
And it was a very popular label. That was a label to be on. Warner Reprise, you bet. They had quality people, and they really backed their artists then, which hasn't remained true, for a lot of big companies don't back either the beginners or a lot of their artists the way they did then. I mean, really back them.
Yeah.
Although sometimes there wouldn't be product in the city when you got there, and that's a huge mistake. But that's what you worry about. We also made a 3-record deal with them, and not just and we were newcomers, and so it was a very good deal. But Mo Austin, who was making their deals then, he went to DreamWorks for a while here in the recent 90s, but he was crazy about Sweetwater. He was a big backer of us, especially after my accident when the band was trembling, what were we going to do? And he backed us. Well, he backed us through those records. And he's a good guy.
You had a great reputation as a live act. Do you think we ever heard the best of the band in the studio recordings that are available?
I don't understand the question, John.
Do you think you were able to, in the time that you had with the band, do you think you were able to recapture that live sound in the studio as well as you could have?
No, I don't. But I think that the latest CD, Live at Last, is a very good CD.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much more live sounding, but because we don't have the flute and the cello featured anymore,
Okay.
it's not the same as those early recordings. But no one. Here's the thing: no one really knew how to record us either. They knew pretty well how to mic 3 guitars and a drummer, but they didn't quite know how to engineer a cello and a flute in rock and roll, as you know, which were featured as main instruments. They didn't quite know how that mastering was going to happen, how to mix that, which when you saw us live, it was like a done deal. It made all the sense in the world. But for the engineering types, it was kind of a, how do we, because a record is just an illusion of sound anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so they kind of didn't really, we might have, if we'd worked with some different people, it might have been different. But we were very young, John, and didn't have a lot of guts in the studio to say, we want this, and we didn't insist on a lot of things. We buckled a lot and compromised a lot. But we always kind of knew that we weren't getting that record. It was very frustrating. So when we made Live at Last in 2002, that was a big deal. But by that time, by 2002, recording was much better.
Yeah.
And everybody out there can do a real good job now, you know.
One thing intriguing about the band was the range of bands and artists that you shared stages with during your time, from rock bands like The Doors to jazz performers like Duke Ellington. In hindsight, do you think this contributed a little bit to people not knowing just where to place the band?
Yeah, but in hindsight, isn't that cool?
Oh, it is.
Because we played with everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, people opened for us, some of them. How's that for irony? I know, but it's funny. It's like the Steve Miller Band opened for us a couple times, you know. But yeah, Duke Ellington, that was wonderful. It's amazing.
I want to talk about Woodstock shortly, but prior to that, you played at quite a few other large outdoor festivals, which probably don't get the recognition now that Woodstock has gotten over the years. Any standout memories there of some of those other festivals?
Oh yeah, there was the very first festival. Our manager showed up and I said, "Yeah, you guys, I got you we're gonna play a little pop festival." And we all looked at each other. We said, "What's a pop festival?" Because no one had ever even heard that term. And so then we flew off to Miami, and that was the first time. It was like this unheard of thing. They had 2 stages. So they had an act on one stage, and then that stage went black, and you went over to the other stage. No one had ever done this kind of stuff before. And I think I have a poster here, and the tickets were $6 a day. There was Jose Feliciano, Procol Harum, Buffy Sainte-Marie, Country Joe, Three Dog, Chuck Berry, Booker T and the MGs. Remember them?
Yeah.
Fleetwood Mac, Pacific Gas. I mean, just incredible people. And Sweetwater, of course. And we played this thing. That was the first time I met Paul Butterfield, whom I adored. And that was just so exciting. And then we started on this pop circuit that developed all over the country. I have a lot of, it's been so long now that my memories are like random pictures that you have in your head of being somewhere cold or somewhere warm and playing these things. But we had just come off like a 3-month tour when Woodstock happened. And we heard about Woodstock, and we got on there, and we wanted to play actually the very first. The first artist was Richie Havens. We were the first band.
That's right.
But the first artist was Richie Havens. We wanted to be the first artist because the keyboard player was in the Air Force Reserve, and he had to go to Air Force Reserve camp that weekend back in California. That's why we're in the spot we were in. So, but we got there, and it was such a mess. We were so bummed out because we'd played so many festivals. We're beautifully organized on these outdoor festivals. There was one here in Southern California at a place called Devonshire Downs, like a couple months before Woodstock, that was beautiful. Just as many people, but they had all the bathrooms working and they held the roads in, roads out. Beautiful. So we got to Woodstock. We said, what happened here? This is insane. I remember we got to the Holiday Inn, and everyone was just running around. No one was in charge. It seemed like no one had a plan. It was like a nightmare. So we weren't like in love with it when we got there. It was like, what kind of a jerk put this thing up, We didn't know till we got back to Los Angeles, and it was the biggest thing on the news, that this was a great event in rock and roll. Because when you were there, it didn't seem that hot.
No. Do you remember much about your actual set that day? Were you happy with the performance?
No, I do remember it. Too bad you asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were the sound check for the festival.
Oh, I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know how the drums were mic'd? They were mic'd through the vocal mics.
Really?
You talk about a disaster. Yeah. But see, that's what I'm saying. Nobody had a plan. Nobody was in charge. They were throwing things up and taking them down, and they kind of got what they deserved with the weather and the mayhem and all that. But they sure made out on it all. They processed it into the great event of all time, which probably was in cultural respects.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any film footage of your Woodstock set?
Oh, yeah.
There is?
Yeah. You have to pay a lot of money for it. NBC. We were asking about... NBC has some great footage of it, but they want a lot of money for it.
Oh, what a shame.
Lots. Yeah. And there's some bootleg stuff out there, John.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've got everything now on the internet.
Now, I guess it would be difficult to talk to you and not have the subject of your car accident come up in the conversation. Are you okay to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, I don't mind.
Right. Can you tell us exactly what happened that night?
It had been raining all day, like just lightly. So the streets, in L.A., those L.A. freeways. And I got on the car. My girlfriend Diane was with me.
Oh.
And it was about 5 o'clock in the evening. And we were on our way to Alex's folks' house to watch our performance. The Steve Allen show that we had taped a few months earlier was going to be on that night. We were doing all this national television. We had 3 days before my car accident, we had performed on the Red Skelton show. And Diane and I were on our way to go meet up with Alex and some of the guys at his folks to watch the Steve Allen show. So I got on the freeway, and I just had driven a really short way when I had to stop my car because the whole freeway was stopped. They had fender benders, and all the lanes were stopped, all these little rain accidents. So I stopped my car in time, and I looked at Diane. I was driving, and I said to her, "Whew, we made it." And right after I said that, I was hit by a drunk going 65 miles an hour. And he made an accordion out of my Buick. And when my car stopped spinning in the rain, Diane, my friend, got out. And nothing had happened to her. But I had pushed that Buick steel up 6 inches with my head. I made a crater in the shape of that roof with my head. But, Diane was wandering around in the rain, and there just happened to be one off-duty nurse who was involved in one of the fender benders who found Diane, my friend, and Diane told her about me, and they came back, and this nurse looked at me, and there was one policeman on the scene, and this nurse looked at the policeman and said, "This girl's got to go." They put me into they only had one ambulance there at the time. Never was told me this because I was completely out cold. They put me into the ambulance. When they shut the door, I went into grand mal seizures from this terrific blow to my head. It was 1969. You don't know very much about heads in 1969 like they do today.
Yeah, of course.
They took me down. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
They took me down to Glendale Memorial Hospital on the one night of the month when all the neurologists of Southern California are having their meeting. All the head doctors, the cream of the crop, they were all there, and they all worked on me. And they all said, this girl will not live. No one can survive a blow like that. My brain was just swelling. They drew a couple holes in my skull, and all my systems broke down. They put me on all life support that they had at the time. The priest came, all the Irish relatives came, and they just waited, ticking off the days, because they couldn't believe I was still living. Then, when I kept living, they kind of began to revise their opinion. They said, well, if she lives, she'll be a vegetable. You know what? I think all those doctors are dead. Right?
Yeah.
So, but I came out of that coma. I had brain damage for 12 years. And that's how I lost my voice, because I permanently damaged one of my vocal cords in Iraq. So it was many, many years to come back to singing.
Yeah.
Really singing.
I guess it's pretty reasonable to say if those neurologists hadn't been in town that night, you may not be here telling your story today.
Correct.
Yeah. It must have been devastating to you to lose what essentially was the tool of your trade with that permanent damage to your vocal cords. How did you cope with that at the time?
Not too well.
Yeah.
It was very hard to face. And what I did was I used denial. And now you look back in hindsight, you recognize what you did. But I never believed them. Because I couldn't. If I believed that, I would have just perished. Just from because I thought that was all I was good at. I didn't think I was good for anything else. So that's when, denial works for you a little bit. You realize, no, that's not true. I'm going to sing. The power that every human being has is amazing. And what they're thinking, how they think, whatever gets you there. So that pulled me through and just trying over and over again to sing. I worked with a doctor I saw a doctor for a while, and I worked with one of the finest voice teachers in the world, Seth Riggs. He worked with me a lot. He and his little proteges, who were also teaching the way he taught. And eventually, I got a new style, a new voice.
So you basically went through the process of trying to find a new singing voice.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just because I never believed I wasn't going to.
The band, though, did try to work around your inability to maintain that upfront role. You must have found this frustrating as well, not being able to contribute in the way that you would be used to.
Yeah, it was terrible. It's very difficult.
You also tried to work yourself into a solo career there, which didn't really take off. How do you look back on that time now?
I'm very proud of that solo career. That was remarkable. It's a lovely record, and it was a major accomplishment. I wrote the whole thing, and it's a lovely record. What happened is the company folded.
Yeah.
The guy who started the company took off and left a lot of people standing around going, what happened? Not just me. And so that was really separate from the quality of the material.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very proud of that material.
It's very hard to find now, that record. Is there any chance of it being reissued at any stage?
Boy, I love that. Well, maybe I should market it myself, huh?
Yeah.
That's a thought.
Absolutely. There was a period there where you did give up music completely, wasn't there?
Yes.
What did you do during that time?
Well, I fell in love, with a carpenter, and I got married to him, and then I moved to the beach, and then I got divorced,
Mm-hmm.
and then I thought, what do I want to do? And I thought about going back to music, but it seemed like I felt like a failure then, and I didn't feel like I knew enough about life, about, people go to school. I went right into Sweetwater and this amazing life that we had right out of high school. And, I said, maybe I need to go to college and discover more, more than rock and roll and being married to a carpenter and divorced, and maybe there's more. And so I was right. I went back to school because I guess I'd become sort of teachable,
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I found yet another career, and I became a college teacher myself then after about 8 years of getting degrees. And I started teaching English in college.
Which you're still doing now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm still doing that right now, to kind of, as I get the other thing going again. But there's a lot of nice aspects to that, but you always miss the stage. That's what I've learned, is that you always miss that.
Now, a few years ago, I remember sitting down in front of my TV and watching an amazing movie of your story, which is shown a few times down here. Now, tell us how that all came together.
Oh, that was fun. Well, it was hard. I mean, I had a friend of mine and I decided that we wanted to do this, and so we wrote this treatment and sold it to VH1. And story treatment is like a page and a half of your life story.
Mm-hmm.
We sold it to them, and then they brought in another writer, and I met with her a couple of times, and she kind of took off with it a little bit, but my intention was to get the band's reputation, raise it from the dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Lazarus got raised from the dead. Because nobody remembered us who was young, and Sweetwater fans were out there. I knew that because when I traveled or went around and met people, they all remembered us. But I wanted our rightful spot back. They needed to remember who we were, and remember how good we were. So the movie did that, even though they used a different writer and kind of left out some things that I still want to talk about before I leave this planet. And they took a little poetic, artistic license with the movie, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I mean, that it just turned up people all over who remembered us and loved us, and brought in a whole new group of fans, because even some young people today are crazy about this early music. I mean, I have hundreds of emails from people saying, I should have been born then. This is the real deal, whatever, A lot of them are more informed on it than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the movie certainly did have the desired effect, though. It did rekindle interest in the band.
Oh, unbelievable. I got the first hour that movie had aired, after it aired, I got 200 emails. And just like a bam, boom, bam, boom. My computer went, what? It was 1999. I was like, what? And it was from all over the country.
Yeah.
And one more time, we were a band of first. We were the first original TV movie for VH1. We were the first show that ever had the pop-ups. You see pop-ups now?
Oh, yes, yep.
They did that first with Sweetwater.
Oh, wow.
This band has a thing about it. We're a band of first. And it was unbelievable. Everybody was reeling from it. And then they showed the movie a lot.
Yeah.
The first couple months, it was on all the time. And every time it went on, that computer got thousands of emails now.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Beautiful. Beautiful, John. I'm so humbled by that. I mean, I just thought, hey, we'll get our rightful spot back. But this stuff that comes in is really beautiful. People are inspired. They say, I want to live my dream now. And it touches me a lot. I also hear from people with head injuries who are struggling to come back. It's a powerful thing, this internet and this world, and how we can communicate ideas to people today.
Wonder how we ever did without it, don't you?
Yeah. You can't remember life before your answer machine, huh?
Tell us about Sweetwater Today. It must be wonderful out there making music again.
It's a lot of fun. They're still the best musicians in the world. There's nobody better than these guys. They play great. And we've still got a pretty good show.
Now, of course,
I don't think they want to play as much as we used to.
Yeah.
But they are still the best.
Of course, you've lost some original members. Tell us about some of the new guys in the group.
The new guys are great. We've got a guitar player named Joe Bruley, who used to be the guitar player in a group called the Music Machine.
Okay.
This guy is so good on guitars. People call him from all over the country. He will talk guitar. He can talk guitar. He could do a marathon on KCET, or public broadcasting on guitar. He's brilliant. He lives and breathes guitars. He's the real deal. He's a great player. Very handsome, too. And then we've got a drummer, Mike Williams, who's just a really warm guy. Drums have to be the center of the band because they have to be strong throughout, and they have to drive the band. And this guy is very good. He used to play with quite a number of people, but Minnie Riperton was the one that he speaks so fondly about to me sometimes, playing with her, being her drummer. And he's a beautiful guy. And then we have a percussionist, Henry, who real good looking, really good, hot. Just keeps the tension on the top with the percussion and the congas. It's beautiful. We don't have a flute and we don't have a cello, and I miss them a lot. I miss them a lot. But to tell you the truth, Alex didn't want that sound. He wanted to just try to have a guitar and the piano sound. So, compromised with that.
So
you can do a lot, huh?
In the tradition of the band, you're obviously still bringing in first-class musicians. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now,
and writers. Great writers.
Nancy, just before I let you go, I just noticed something on your website too. There's you've got a one-woman show in the works.
Yay!
Yeah, tell us about that.
Don. I sure do. It's a one-woman show where I get to fill in all the blanks that the VH1 movie, might have left there, or questions, and tell some things that didn't make it to the movie, and talk about, being one-on-one with some of these other fine artists of the day, and just sometimes some funny stories, and I get to be unplugged and personal, play songs, some songs that have never been heard, some things that are new, and then be unplugged and personal with some of the old standards. And it's going over great in workshops right now, and I'm getting ready to submit it to a kind of a bigger venue and see if I can kind of really get that going. I like to end up on Broadway with it.
Fantastic. So that is something you're planning to tour with?
Correct.
Oh, that's fantastic. Nancy, it's been an absolute delight to speak to you. Thanks so much for taking the time out.
Well, it's an honor and a thrill, and I want to come to Australia.
Oh.
Yeah. And when will this be on, John?
In the upcoming months. You just got a piece of music together to space it out, and it'll turn into a nice little 2-hour special.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you get the CDs from Robert Fitzpatrick?
No, not as yet.
Okay, great.
Thanks again, Nancy. It's been fantastic. Absolute treat to speak to you.
Thank you very much.
We hope we do get to see you down here. That'd be great.
I'd love it. I'd love it.
Oh, actually, I might send you some information of promoters and that from down here that might be interested in taking you on.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll send you some contacts.
Beautiful. Doesn't get any better than that, John.
Okay, thanks again, Nancy. All the best.
You bet. Same to you.
Take care.
Bye.
We'll be in touch. Bye-bye.